Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Big East Rewind. I'm Chuck Everson, your host, and my co-host, as always, is the sensational Sonny Spera. How are you, Sonny?
Chuck, I'm doing great. Really excited about today.
Yeah, you're excited. I'm very excited. I haven't seen this guy in a while, and I'm a little intimidated. I got two very good-looking guards with me. I'm representing the big guys. We got these guards that both are Big East heartthrobs in their day, and you, Sonny, I know back in the '80s were on the magazine covers and stuff like that, and Tiger Beat and stuff. And Jay has been on GQ, so I'm a little intimidated by being in the room with such good-looking guys. But
still crush both of us, Chuck. Don't worry about it. We'll be the intimidator.
Come on, Jay. So we'll carry him. We'll carry him.
So today, we have two-time national champion and the newest member of the Basketball Hall of Fame, Villanova's top cat, Coach Jay Wright. Jay, thanks so much for coming in, and congratulations on all the recent events that have occurred with you getting into the Hall of Fame. That is awesome, awesome news. We're all so proud of you, buddy.
Thank you, my man. Great to be with you. Usually, pre-COVID, we would have seen each other a couple times already this summer, but good to be on with you and Sonny. Yeah. And it's pretty cool you guys are doing this. I like this.
It's been a lot of fun, Jay. We've gone back and talked to a lot of the guys that played when we did, and Raft was our first guest, so we had a great time with him, and of course, listening to the stories and stuff, and and it's been building gradually, and it's been really great for both of us, actually. So
great idea, man, and great for the Big East, man. It's good. It's good to always remember where you came from, and the Big East certainly more than anything in college basketball has got incredible history, and it's good to keep it going.
Yeah, very true. Go ahead, son.
That's where Syracuse comes in. That's where Syracuse comes in, the old school Big East.
That is true, man. Hey, Sonny, I'll give you this year at the NCAA tournament. We were playing North Texas State in a second round game, and Syracuse was playing West Virginia in their second round game.
Yes.
And the way they had it this year, like you had to wait outside the arena and outside the locker room until the game ended. Then they had to clean the locker rooms, because of COVID. It was crazy. So Huggins is coming out of our locker room. They cleaned it. I'm coming in. We start talking. Now they had just lost to Syracuse and Boeheim. And Huggins and I are talking. Boeheim comes up and he goes to Huggins. He goes, he is the luckiest guy in the world. He goes, he couldn't win a game in the Big East, and then we all left, and now he wins everything. And now look at him; he's in the Sweet 16. He's playing a mid-major to go to the Sweet 16. There's nobody luckier than him.
I couldn't imagine Coach Boeheim saying
that. We had him on. We had him on, Jay, and he really loosened up a little bit with us. I guess it was being around one of his former players or whatever, but he was laughing and kidding around with us. It was really nice to see that side of his personality. It was pretty cool.
He's a good dude, man. He is quietly funny. He really is.
Yeah, that's a great,
very dry sense of humor. Yeah,
very dry.
He's a character.
So let's start this thing off, Jay. Talk to us about how you came to Villanova as an assistant under Coach Mass. How did that all happen?
Well, back in the day, I started at University of Rochester as a Division III assistant, so those jobs that you were on a 10-month contract, so you didn't get paid. You didn't get paid for July and August. So I used to, in July and August, I used to go work camps, which it's funny. I just got off. We're on the special committee. I just got off a Zoom with John Calipari and Coach Boeheim. John was at Pittsburgh at the time. Obviously, Coach Boeheim was at Syracuse. And I used to leave Rochester practice and drive to the Dome to watch Pearl Washington and you guys, Sonny and the squad, and then drive back to Rochester. That was my, I used to love that back in the day. And then in the summer, I'd work Pitt's camp. and that's how I met John Calipari. But my main thing is, so I worked 2 weeks at Villanova's camp. That was my heart and soul, man. I love that. And as you know, Chuck, that Coach Massimino's camp was the biggest camp in the country. I still have coaches still tell me stories about what Coach used to do, making them come in and speak at camp. Coach's camp was so big, he had to split it into 2 different campuses, but he would ask, like, you know, whoever won the national championship, they'd come in and speak at camp, and Coach would have them speak to the one camp, which is like 500 kids, and they think they'll be done, and then Coach would say to me, "Hey, Jay, I ran the camp when I worked for Coach." He'd say, "Hey, go take them up to West Campus and just let them say hello to the kids," which really meant there's another 400 kids up there. Have them go up there and tell him he's got to do another lecture. And I'd be driving like Rick Pitino, Dr. J. They'd be like, "Where are we going?" I'm like, "Well, Coach just wants you to say hi to the kids." Then we get to this other camp, and I'd have him in a golf cart, you know, and he'd see like there's 400 kids here, and then I'd have to take them back, and they'd be going like, "GD Rolly, I can't believe he got me speaking twice, and he doesn't pay me. He's going to pay me in pasta." That camp,
That's about right.
that camp was legendary. So I worked at the camp, and that was important to him. He took great pride in that. So he saw me, you know, coach and work with the kids, and we developed a relationship. And then when Marty Marbach got the head coaching position at Canisius, Coach Mass hired me. He moved everybody else, moved Steve Lapis up, moved everybody else up, and put me in that spot.
So now talk about, you know, and you mentioned them already, and we'll jump into it. Talk about the influence that he had on you, that Coach Massimino had on you, and your coaching style, and, you know, all the things that turned into the current Villanova culture. I know, you know, you learned a bunch of stuff from Coach Mass, as we all did, and then polished it all up and kind of made it your own, some of the things that you guys talk about, right?
Yeah, but I would say, you know, 80% of what we do, I learned from Coach Mass, and maybe, you know, Chuck, 10% I learned what not to do from Coach Mass.
Yeah.
There was one of a kind, man. He was one, but just the most amazingly passionate, loyal, intelligent X and O wise guy. And if anybody deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, it's him. You know, but he took such pride in all of us, his players, his coaches, his family, right? And
yeah,
and I learned that. I learned so much of that from him. Although when I became a head coach for the first time at Hofstra, he had just left UNLV, and Brett Gunning was our assistant. And I tried to do everything my first year. I just tried to just imitate him. I tried to do everything like him. Run all his multiple defenses, run his offenses, everything. And we were playing Dartmouth at home in our first year, and he came to the game, and we got blown out at home by Dartmouth. And Brett Gunning, who was our graduate assistant, who was our manager under Coach Mass at Villanova, was my assistant. He drove Coach to the airport. So the next day we came back. I said, you know, what did Coach say when you dropped him off? He's like, nothing. Like, I could tell. I said, well, tell me. What did he say? He's like, you really want to know? I said, yeah. He goes, does Jay know what the hell he's doing? And I was like, I know it looked that bad, but I did learn, like, you can't be him. You know, you gotta take what you can, and then you gotta be yourself. You know, and I think that first year I learned I'm trying to do everything just like him. I'm not him. There's things I can't do that he could pull off. And there's things I probably shouldn't do that he could pull off that no one else could.
Right.
So, Jay, now when you're at Hofstra, you obviously stayed in touch with Coach Mass. Was a thought in your mind that, hey, someday that could be me? Or how did that next step take place from Hofstra and getting to Villanova?
You know what, Sonny? Like, never. Like, I never thought of going back to Villanova because, you know, Villanova's only had about 5 coaches, you know, like since 1940. Like, no one's, you know me and Chuck are biased, but it's the best place to coach college basketball in the world. There's so many great things about this place. So no one leaves, like, so I always assumed, all right, I'm not going back there. I can go other places. And when we start to have some success at Hofstra, there was other schools that were starting to talk to me. I just never considered Villanova. And I was really ready. I was down to Tennessee and Rutgers. And then in my mind, I don't know if I ever said it to anybody, but in my mind, I was thinking, I'm going to probably go to take this Rutgers job. And the Rutgers AD, Bob Mulcahy, was a Villanova grad. So we were friends. And then right at that time, Steve Lapis left and took the UMass job. And they literally called me. And it was right before I was going to take the job. They literally called me and said, the president called me and said, do you want this job? That was it. There was no interview, nothing. And I just said, yes, that was it. It was that simple. And he said, meet our athletic director, Vince Nicastro, and Dottie Malloy, our head legal counsel. Meet him at Olga's Diner. That's where we met. There's no contract. He's like, all right, this is what we pay you. And I was like, all right, do we run camp? Yeah, all right, good. That was it. No agent, nothing. That was it.
I remember when that all went down. I remember when all that went down. I said, I called you. Like I was telling Sonny earlier off the air. I called you on your Hofstra voicemail and said, hey, tell me it's okay to come back and wear my Villanova stuff again and be part of it. So you were like, hey, get down. I was down as soon as I got off the plane from Mexico. I was back in the office within 24 hours to say hello. So go ahead, son.
I was just going to say, speaking of the diner, Chuck tells the story about you and Coach Mass have the coffee creamers versus salt and pepper shakers going over some offensive, defensive sets.
Coach Mass couldn't go anywhere. Well, first of all, we always were eating. Like we were either on the basketball coach recruiting, we're on the court coaching, teaching, watching. No, on the court recruiting or eating. Either watching film eating or Xing and Oing eating. And if we were in his office and we were watching film, we were eating while we were watching film. If we were at a diner or Italian restaurant, we were eating and we had the shakers and the ketchup bottle would be the basket, and it was constant. And it's actually one of the things I learned not to do because his mind, by the time, I was working for him, he'd won a national championship. He had done everything. He had such an incredible X and O mind. He would just get bored and change our offenses and defense just because he had new ideas in his head, and I realized that as I got to be a coach. I was like, no matter how bored I get with stuff, the players are only seeing it, for the first or second time. And his mind, he was a X and O genius. He couldn't help himself. It was just always going. And you should see when you get to the Italian restaurants, they get rolls. They have rolls on the table and the dish of pasta. It was incredible.
I've been a part of some of those meetings. I remember at camp, that's the one that Sonny's talking about when he had, we went upstairs and you were working on the defense you were going to use for the 2016 season that time. So,
it never ended with him. How about when the first time we went to the Final Four in 2009, Chuck Daly, who was Coach Mass, was Chuck Daly's assistant, and really always Chuck Daly was Coach Mass's mentor, kind of like he is for me. And Chuck Daly was battling cancer, and it was our first time in the Final Four. I'm nervous, and Coach Mass is there with me. And he's telling me new plays, and he goes, hey, I got to get Chuck on the phone. He gets Chuck Daly on the phone with me. Chuck's like, Jay, Carolina's going to press you. I got a great press offense now. You got a pen? I'm like, he's in his deathbed, and coach is putting him on the phone. That's where he gets it. Like those two, their minds are constantly going X and O wise, and players got to keep up with it. Chuck, you guys had 70 different defenses.
That's right. That's exactly right. It was, and it got to be difficult at times, but we all knew them. At the end of the day, we all knew them, or you didn't play. That was it. So
Coach Boeheim had a simpler philosophy on defense.
Yeah.
A simpler philosophy.
yeah.
It's true. Yeah, and you know what, Sonny, you know what, one of the things Coach Boeheim got me involved in USA basketball.
Yep.
And when I was the head coach at Hofstra, he picked me as his assistant on a U20 World Championship qualifier. And so since then, you know, everything I've done with USA basketball with Mike Krzyzewski and himself, and he always got me involved. So I owe him for life for that. And but I spent a lot of time with him. And I don't know if you would think of this as being true, but I always try to think like what makes him so successful. He's a good X and O guy. I mean, all coaches are, but I kind of feel like watching him all these years, there's not a person I've ever met, a basketball person, that can identify what impacts on and off the court, winning and losing, and just concentrates on that and doesn't let anything else distract him. Does that make sense?
No, it's 1,000% right. It's 1,000%. Like when people are talking about him retiring, he can't retire. Right? He's so good in that.
He's a lifer, Jay.
Yeah.
And he's so good in that zone. You're right. I mean, not zone defense, but in that area you're talking about.
And like, you know, other things can be going on, you know, guy gets in trouble or something's going on. Like he has a way of focusing, like, is that going to impact us winning or losing? And if it doesn't impact us, I'm not, it's not going to bother me. Like, I'll deal with it but it's not going to bother me. Right. And it's like all this change that we're on this special committee, you know, like himself, me, Coach Krzyzewski, John Calipari, Mark Few, Izzo. He is the most, at his age, still the most insightful guy on the committee, because whatever guys get emotional about, he just gets right to the point of like, what's going to impact Syracuse winning and losing. He doesn't say it that way, but you can tell that's the way his mind's working. And he thinks so clearly that way. And you look at the different teams he's had that he's taken to Final Fours that looked like they were out of it during the season, and the other teams that were just dominant all year. He's done it every possible way.
Talk a little bit now. You talk about now we're in the Olympics, so now your role's changed a little bit, right? So you are now involved with Coach Pop, right?
Yeah, you know, another genius and like Coach Krzyzewski, because I worked with Coach Krzyzewski for, I don't know, maybe like 10, 12 years in different ways, preparing the Olympic team. And Jim Boeheim was always a part of that. Both of them, because of their military background, are incredible big picture guys and operational guys, like great with logistics, like attention to every little detail, you know, from where we're going to have training camp, pre-camp staff meetings, where everybody's going to line up, have just so organized. And both of them really good at individual relationships with the players and creating leaders within their team, but they do it in different ways. What was really interesting to me was to see how hard Coach K worked to get the NBA guys to buy into him, you know, and he had a lot of NBA assistants, but he worked hard at it, and he was always plotting on how to get through to these guys. And then going to work with Pop, it was so easy with Pop because he knew them, and it was just automatic respect because he was in the NBA. So it was really interesting to see the respect that all the players have for Pop, but it also really made me even more impressed with what Coach Krzyzewski did, because I saw how he was able to get that respect and how hard he worked to get it. And that's what it's all about with those guys, man. Those guys are their own men. They're professional. They've already accomplished a lot. Now it's, do I respect you or not? And am I going to allow you to to direct me and coach me or not. And those two are two of the best at getting guys to follow them.
Well, I think you're getting into the culture part, which I think Villanova is very special with. And I was fortunate. I got to see you a couple times at your coaching clinic at Nova, and that culture really comes through. How much of it did you adapt from USA? Some of it's Mass. Talk about developing the Nova culture.
Well, you said the key word, Sonny. It's developing. Like you don't come in and just in your first, second year say, okay, this is our culture and this is what it's going to be. It's a culmination of decisions you make, things you learn. But as you do that, there's got to be a consistency to certain core values. Some things can change, but there's got to be a consistency to some core values of playing hard, playing together, playing smart, playing with pride. And your decisions have to consistently reflect that. And your decisions that you want the guys to be the best students, the best players, and the best men they can be. Over time, you've got to consistently make decisions and consistently learn and grow with those pillars in mind, and people can change and systems can change, players can change, times can change, but you got to find ways to adapt and stay consistent to your core values. And it's hard. And with this NIL coming up here, July 1st, I think that's going to be our greatest challenge is how do we stay consistent with our core values and enter this new world where guys are going to be making money while they're in college, and we've always talked about you come to this program, to grow as a basketball player, to grow as a student, to grow as a man. Like we've never said like you come to this basketball program to make money, right. But now that's going to happen, and we got to figure out a way to integrate this, and it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a difficult conversation when you got a kid coming in and, he's looking at dollar signs and stuff, and you're looking at the team as a whole and not the individual. That we know that, nobody's bigger than the program. The program's bigger than all of us, all individuals, How does that fit in? You have to have some difficult conversations with some of these guys, I guess.
Exactly. And you guys know because you were players and you were part of teams, but a lot of the politicians that are making these decisions and the politicians, well, let me put it this way. This is something the NCAA should have attacked 10, 15 years ago and should have incrementally built this into NCAA basketball because 15, 20 years ago, coaches were starting to make more money, athletic directors were making more money, schools were making more money, and nothing changed for the student athletes. It should have started way back then. Well, now politicians jumped on this, and now it's getting dropped in our lap in a time where it's going to be a mess for a few years until we figure it out. But to coaches and players, no one's thinking about the fact that like what we all love about it is being a part of a team. You love playing with a guy like Eddie Pinckney and Pearl Washington or whoever. You love playing with those guys and knowing that the whole world thinks this guy's a superstar, but on our team, like he's just one of us, and that's what we all love about being a part of. And when we all get together, it doesn't matter who was the leading scorer. Like we're all brothers. Like we
Right.
all bust each other's chops the same. That's what we love. That's what I'm really concerned about because like you said, Chuck, there's going to be some guy's going to make $50,000 and another guy's going to make $5,000. And it might not even be the players, but like that guy that makes $5,000 might have some guys in his ear saying, hey, if you didn't pass so much, if you shot more, you'd be making 50.
Yeah.
It's going to be all of that you're going to have to deal with. And it's going to be what college coaching is going to be now. Like that's going to be our job is how do we keep these teams together? how do we keep these kids committed to getting an education, to growing, to getting to be the best player they can be and still make money. It should have been figured out 15, 20 years ago so that the kids could do this, but now it's getting dropped in their laps. And as usual, the players are going to benefit, some players, but a lot of players are going to get hurt by this in the short term. But then we'll figure it all out. I think it's going to take 2 or 3 years until we see the pitfalls, we see the positives, and we figure it all out.
Yeah, it's like a beta test.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trust, I think, that goes into that whole thing, Jay, especially with the kids trusting you and seeing what you've done already as far as not the wins and losses, but how you've cultivated these guys to be good pros. We've got 8 or 9 guys now that are real good pros. A couple of them are still playing in the playoffs. They see what you've done to develop them to get to that level. And there's got to be a trust factor there at some point where they trust you with that kind of decision on what they can and cannot do when it comes to making money.
Yeah, I hope so, Chuck. I really do. The thing is, there's no template for this. There's no precedent. Like the NCAA is going to use these terms, and they're going to have to, like, fair market value. But there's no precedent for fair market value. If Syracuse wants to pay a guy $50,000 for doing a commercial, and in Villanova the guy gets $20,000, that doesn't mean Syracuse is doing anything wrong. That's what they're willing to pay there, But what I hope is the NCAA doesn't start looking at it like, well, you can only make this much on a commercial. I hope they just got to let it. They just got to let it go. They got to let the market, and I think they'll put general guidelines in, and I think eventually they'll see, like, one of the obvious issues is going to be sneaker companies. What are they going to sign these kids in high school and then not give the schools the deals that they have because they'll have the guys they want in high school? That kind of stuff is going to, I think, hit initially. But again, as I said, over the next few years, I think we'll have some messy situations. There'll probably be some lawsuits. It'll get cleaned up. Probably 3 years from now, there will be a general federal laws, really, on what everybody can do in college athletics.
Coach, we're up against the time clock a little bit. Let's jump to the run that you guys have been on over the last 7 or 8 years with the championships and stuff. Talk about from 16 on, and what kind of guys that you had on those teams, and how that perpetrated right into the national championship, both in 16 and 18.
Well, first, we had really good players, as any good team does. My boy John Calipari, who I love, he is the great marketer of all time. But after we won in 16, none of those guys from that team got drafted because Archie Diacono and Daniel Chefu were the only seniors. Everybody else came back, and they were all young. And John said publicly, and I know him in his little recruiting shot at me, he was like, I would be embarrassed if my team won the national championship and none of my players got drafted. And he's like, I don't want to get what I want, and they don't get what they want, So, and it turned out from that team, that 16 team, Ryan Arcidiacono was still playing in the NBA, even though he didn't get drafted. Daniel Chefu played for the Wizards, even though he didn't get drafted. Mikal Bridges was on that team. Jalen Brunson was on that team. Yeah. They're still in the NBA. Dante DiVincenzo was sitting out that year. He's in the NBA. Eric Pasco was sitting out that year. He was on the team. He's in the NBA. So they were all NBA players. That's why we won, But they were great dudes. We, like on the 16 team, our practices with Dante DiVincenzo and Eric Pascal sitting out, we would practice sometimes and get our butts kicked by those guys. And I would say to our staff, like, damn, like we're not that good, man. And sometimes my assistants would say, yeah, we are. Those guys sitting out are going to be pros.
Yeah.
And you didn't know it.
You had the best white team, I think, ever on, the white shirt team, ever in the history of college basketball with those guys.
It was. So, and Mikal Bridges was, he didn't start on that team. So they all played on the 8. Josh Hart was on that team. So,
Yeah.
We had really good players and guys that were smart enough to know that they were good players. They needed to work on some things to become pros. They were patient enough to work at it. And because they stuck around for a couple of years and we were able to win too.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
can I ask you, because winning
Sonny.
that first championship had to be a huge step. Like just getting over that hump, that first championship. I know Coach Boeheim, I know his feelings, from 2003. How about yourself? How did that feel for yourself and your program?
Yeah, you know what, Sonny? It was never believe it or not, it was never a goal. The 85 team at Villanova, and I don't know if you agree with this, Chuck, but the 85 team at Villanova still has a special magical presence that's even greater than our 16 and 18 teams. I still feel like when those guys are around, and I kind of liked it that way. I liked that those guys are always around there. So we just wanted to keep up that great tradition and be competing every year for Big East championships. And so it happened, all of a sudden it just happens. You win it and you don't think about what comes with that. But to your point, Sonny, you get invited to the ESPYs, you get invited to the White House. All of a sudden, everything's coming at you, and it hits you. Wow, this is really big. You think, wow, what would it be like to win a national championship? Oh, that'd be cool. You don't really realize everything that comes with it, And it was. You don't want it to change you as a person, but it changes your program. The respect people have for your program, it changes your recruiting. And our challenge was to stay consistent with our culture and not get caught up in trying to change just because we had won a national championship.
Yeah.
That's a great point. But I think the university, right, all of a sudden admissions are 3 times up. So, I mean, the impact, like you said, is just so expansive. It's hard to really get your hands around.
You know what? That's a great point, Sonny. In 85, when Chuck and those guys won the championship, admissions skyrocketed, and even the school, it just changed with its national notoriety. But the academicians didn't really want to give basketball the credit for that. They kind of wanted it to be like, yeah, it was, and they were partly right. It was the basketball team, but it was also our good academics and our professors. And it was the basketball team. Yeah. But in 16, when we won it, it was a different time. The school knew, and the school was smart. And the school actually, Villanova actually, I can't remember the exact number, but they monetized what the value of the increased applications, and not just in number of applications, but the quality of students, and then the national media exposure. They monetized the value of that, and they knew, and they doubled down on it, and they've done that ever since. So I give our president, Father Peter, a lot of credit in how he responded to that championship.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, when we won it, that's exactly right. Everything was like a snowball rolling down the hill when it came to that kind of stuff, and I'm sure it continued when you guys had the successes that you've had. Coach, we're running late on time. I know you got another commitment that you have to do. Give me 1 or 2 statements on what your time with Coach. What he meant to you as your mentor here, and then what it's like now that you're going to go into the Hall of Fame, and what that means to you, and then we'll wrap this thing up and say goodbye to you.
Well, I think the first thing to say about Coach is you still call him Coach. I still call him Coach. I can't call him Rolly. People around us. He was bigger than life. He really was. And anybody that was around Villanova or around him knew that, and would say that. When he came into a room, he just took over the room. And but his loyalty to his players, his staff, it was forever. It was forever. And it was, you know, he was there for you. I mean, he helped me get my first house. He you know, the first job I got at Hofstra, I feel like he threatened that AD. They had 3 finalists and I wasn't one of them. And I think he basically threatened the AD, like, you have to talk to this guy, Jim Garvey, who was a former Big East official. And he really forced me on the guy. I think the guy really met with me just to shut him up, stop him from hounding him. He just worked so hard for all his guys, and he took so much pride in his guys. And I try to do a little bit of that. One of the funny things is, like, we all know he was the toughest guy too. He was tough.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, he fired me like 5 times. He always took me back. But
Yep.
What's funny is, in his older years, he'd come around to our practices, and, you know, he got to be older, a little bit more frail. And the guys would be like stretching on the floor. He'd be walking by them, patting them on the head. Hey, babe, how you doing, babe? Hey, guys, you know. And my guys would be, and I'm watching my guys like, hey, coach, how you doing? You know, everybody joking around. And every once in a while, I'd pull the guys aside and say, hey, just so you know, that's not the guy that I work for. Like, that sweet old man walking around here, that guy was the toughest guy I ever knew. So just don't, I know you guys all think like, oh, coach had it easy working for him, like, sweet little old guy. It was so funny at the end how he became so lovable. He's sweet and lovable at the end, but he was tough, man.
Yeah.
He was demanding. He was tough, and the most competitive guy you ever met. So you know, at the Hall of Fame, I want to have Billy Cunningham come up there with me. And in my mind, I told Billy, in my mind, that's kind of like having Coach there with me, because
That's awesome. That's really
so
cool.
close.
Yeah.
And that was another one of Coach's boys, mentors. And I just feel like I have him there with me, and I hope he's in the Hall of Fame one day.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, we're all hoping that same thing. So to end this thing, Jay, what does it mean to you, from all of the, you know, you talked about all of the guys that had influence on you, from Pop to Coach K to Coach Mass to all the guys you've worked with. Talk about what that all means now to be the culmination of being able to go into the Basketball Hall of Fame.
It's really overwhelming, Chuck. I'm not comfortable with it, man. I guess I'm gonna have.
I know you well enough to know that.
I guess I'm gonna have to be at some point. I don't know. I just, you know, when you get the call, it makes you stop and think about your career. When you have opportunities like this, you talk. But I hate talking about myself. I love like we got practice tomorrow morning. Like I love our guys. I love being in it. And I think, Sonny, that's what you're talking about, Coach Boeheim. Like, there's no way I can go that long, but like, that's what I'm sure Coach Boeheim doesn't care about. He don't care about his national team. Like, he cares about this year's team and the guys he has around him, and then being able to hang out with his former players, you know, like that's what we all love. So, you know, in September, it's going to be overwhelming. It's going to be surreal to go up on stage and be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I know I'm going to have to deal with that. But between now and then after that, I'm just going to enjoy coaching Villanova. And, you know, Chuck, yeah. I really like being the coach at Villanova is the greatest gift for me. I just love being the coach at that place, representing you guys is the best thing, better than the Hall of Fame. And so I want to cherish being able to do that every day as long as I can.
Well said.
Perfect.
What a perfect way to wrap this up. Thank you so very much for coming together, and hopefully we can get all the guys back either for a summer jam or something coming up so we can celebrate with you when everything calms down a little bit. We can all get together and celebrate the way we do at Villanova for special events and special days like that. You know that. Yeah. So, hey, I love you, man. Thanks so much for coming on. It really means a lot, Jay. I know you're busy with everything going on. I appreciate your time and coming out. And being
too, man. Great being with you guys. Sonny, great to see you, brother.
Jay, thank you very much.
See you, buddy.
See ya.
You've been listening to the Big East Rewind with Sonny Spera and Chuck Everson. The Big East Rewind is produced and directed by Daryl Gurney and Nick Chico Chorus. You can reach us for any comments or any suggestions on bigeastrewind@gmail.com. You can email us. You can find us on YouTube. When you find us on YouTube, put in Big East Rewind, and all of our shows will come up, and we've had some good ones. And check it out. We would like you to hit like and hit subscribe. All right. So we'll see you all on the next edition of the Big East Rewind. Have a great day.